What's going on, YouTube? Josh from the lab here. I wanted to discuss a little bit more about Dylan Mortensen's situation. Now, I'm sure people are going to go, Josh, don't use her name. Don't use her name. It's out there. Her name's out there. It's been out there. Her photo's out there floating around. She's getting bombarded. And I'm going to use her name because I'm going to do my best to adequately, again, defend her. But at the same time, I did want to point out a couple things that I did find interesting in the affidavit that I hadn't talked about on the show. Now, one of the biggest things to me in that affidavit that I found completely interesting is that Dylan lived on the second floor. I had always been under the impression that both of the roommates were on the first floor. I had always thought they were on the first floor. Not true. So now it makes even more sense. The killings took place on the second and third floor, and even on the second floor, that's how you get out of the sliding glass door in the kitchen. And so it makes sense that she could hear and see. Now, I'm assuming she didn't know what was going on, and if she did, she was so scared that, she became paralyzed with fear. And that makes sense to me. But I was reading an article from, it's sportskita.com. And basically it says, who is Dylan Mortensen, surviving Idaho roommate, was scared to death seeing Brian Koberg. And I agree with that. Obviously, she was scared to death. I don't see how anybody could keep their wits about them in that situation. I'm sure that, a lot of people think that they could, but there was a lawyer speaking on Fox News by the name of Shannon Gray. And what she says is she was scared. She was scared to death. And rightly so. This guy had just murdered 4 people in the home. Gray added that Mortensen's description of the alleged killer helped officers who eventually determined that it aligned with the appearance of Brian Koberger. She also went on to say that she's a victim in this case. Everybody kind of forgets that. And I don't think everybody kind of forgets that. I think some people kind of forget it. I think that some people purposely forget it. And I think some people don't care that she's a victim because she didn't do what they had expected of her. She didn't live up to the expectations of people that had nothing to do with this or have never been in this situation, so on and so forth. And one of the things is that it says, where she says she's a victim in this case, everybody kind of forgets that. The Consalves family doesn't have any ill will towards her or anything like. And let me just make this clear. I'm very glad that they don't. And we should really follow suit because they're not harboring ill will. If the cops don't believe anything was suspicious. Now, at first you would think, well, yeah, 8 hours, that's a long time to pass by. Well, moving on in this article, it's a good article. It refers to Dylan as surviving victim of a massacre. Okay. So, I guess, they're going to cut her a little break here and rightfully so by not publicly trying to humiliate her as to something that she's not or that she didn't live up to the expectations of the people on the internet who tend to do everything right, or just people in general. Heavy.com, an anonymous Moscow police officer said, and you know how I feel about anonymous sources, but this does make sense. The 8-hour gap has been something that we have puzzled over, and we don't know if it was an issue of intoxication or fear. We look at these things through the lens of rational adults, and when we do that, sometimes things don't make sense to us, but she's a 20-year-old girl, and we don't know what she was doing or if she was scared. Well, I could say that we don't know what she was doing is true, but I can guarantee you that she was scared. You got to remember, these 2 girls were so upset that when they went outside after seeing this, these girls were so upset that they went outside after seeing this. One passed out and the other one was so hyperventilating that the message wasn't clear enough for the operator. Now, I don't know if Brian saw Dylan. I have no idea. I would assume that you would think that you could see somebody just kind of peek and open the door. Who knows what Brian's mindset was I don't know. It doesn't sound like it, because I think if he would have seen her, he would have done the same thing that he had done to the others, to the other victims. One thing that I kind of can attribute this to is that, when something like that happens and the adrenaline, or whatever you want to call it, insane rage adrenaline, kind of calms down, and maybe he has obviously expelled a bunch of energy because of the graphic physical nature of this crime, these murders. I kind of attribute it to eyewitnesses were talking about the boys from Columbine after they had done their massacre and they had tons of bullets left. There were students still hiding in classrooms that they could have just went in and kept doing what they were doing. And they were wandering around aimlessly, with no sense of direction or purpose. Just kind of what most people described at there is they were in, it was like a trance, like a euphoric feeling, if you will, kind of the high that they were looking for, or whatever you want to call it. I feel sick saying that, but it's the truth. It's kind of the feeling of, power and bloodlust and whatever they'd been fantasizing about, because it sounds like that's what this was. Something planned out and fantasized, romanticized and relived, and checking on the crime scene, him coming back to the crime scene, that morning to kind of see if there were police everywhere. And Dylan Mortensen, Ohio massacre survivor, surviving victim, an eyewitness to a horrific crime. That's what we should call her, because that's who she is. Thank you for listening.